Are you looking for a robotic lawnmower that mows without boundary wire in parallel lines? But you don't want to worry about poor satellite reception due to trees or buildings? Then today's video is just right for you. I have the brand new top model Neomow X from the manufacturer HOOKII in the test for you. What this robotic lawnmower has to offer, whether it delivers on its promises, and how it really performs, we will explore in today's video. So let's get started right after the intro. But if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to this channel and activate the bell so you don't miss any future videos. You can find the current prices of the device to support my work in the video description below. Thank you very much for your support. And with that, let's get started. If you have large trees or buildings in your garden, which can lead to poor satellite reception, then today's video will be especially interesting for you. The so-called Neomow X from HOOKII promises us unconditional navigation thanks to LiDAR technology, accurate to within a few centimeters, and all without any cables or GPS. We'll find out how well this actually works in testing, whether it's worth the investment, or if you'd be better off choosing a different model. Let's start with a few brief words about setting up the robot. Since this is a wireless lawnmower robot, the tedious task of laying the boundary wire is completely eliminated. Instead, as with any other wireless device, we need to map the area in advance by steering the robot along the boundary of the lawn with the smartphone. The whole thing worked for me in the test without difficulties, and depending on how large the area is, it is completed within a few minutes. I find the control of the robot to be somewhat a bit more too sensitive or jerky, which requires a little bit more delicate finesse to ensure that the boundaries can be mapped out precisely. I'm already familiar with better implementations of this, and in my opinion, it should be easy to optimize in the software. To keep the video concise at this point, I will now skip further explanations about the setup and installation of the robot. For all those who are still interested in the setup, configuration, and installation of the lawnmower robot, I will record a separate step-by-step video if needed. Feel free to let me know in the comments. And with that, let's take a closer look at the new Neomow. Starting with the external appearance of the robot, one will indeed quickly notice that the new Neomow X is surprisingly large, especially if you know the lil brother, the Neomow S. In addition, with the displayed dimensions and box shape, the Neomow X seems a bit bulky to me, but of course, that's a matter of taste. From the front, however, the device gives off a very modern impression, not least due to the curved lines and the HOOKII LED logo. While it does look great, it can also be a disadvantage in the dark. I would like to see an option in the app to disable the LEDs, as they are quite bright. According to the manufacturer, this feature is already in development and is expected to be included in upcoming updates. The robot's casing, on the other hand, is made of simple matte plastic, which is certainly intended to save weight. Because the Neomow weighs approximately a proud 18.74 kilograms due to its size. And thus, as you can see in the comparison chart, it is one of the heaviest robots I have tested on my channel so far. In my opinion, the weight itself isn't really the main issue. What I find more unfortunate is that, given its weight, the robot doesn't have any dedicated handles to lift or carry the device. In this case, I may do with the wheel arches or the bumper, which is not really the intended purpose. I would really like to see an additional handle integrated into the housing, for example, to hold the device steady while cleaning. Speaking of which, according to the manufacturer, the mower is IPX5 certified, as you can also see in the comparison chart. In practice, this means we should be cautious when cleaning and only use a gentle water spray. That way, there won't be any issues and the mower can be cleaned without much effort. Taking a look at the side view of the robot, the immediate question is, how well does this massive device actually perform when it comes to off-road capability? For this purpose, the Neomow has two nicely large-sized drive wheels on the front, as can be seen, with a diameter of 230 millimeters. As can be seen in the comparison graphic, the device ranks in the upper mid-range and can handle small to medium irregularities on the lawn quite well without getting stuck. In addition, the oversized wheels have a coarse tread, providing sufficient grip on the lawn. I only noticed slight creaking from the plastic housing occasionally when dealing with particularly rough unevenness on the lawn. Another point is slopes, which the Neomow can handle effortlessly. However, since the robot only has front-wheel drive, its climbing ability is limited. A proud 45% is specified, which is visibly very good compared to other devices. However, not least due to the front-wheel drive and the robot's heavy weight, I noticed during my test that there was an increased loss of traction, especially on wet surfaces with steeper inclines. Because despite its size and weight, the robot can turn and maneuver on the lawn without much effort. I also haven't noticed any burrowing tracks so far, which is a positive sign. For stabilization, the Neomow is equipped with two small steering rollers with a diameter of 11 centimeters. The measured ground clearance is 6 centimeters, visible in the video. Thanks to the front-wheel drive and the dual steering rollers, uneven terrain poses no problem for the device, even if the dips are somewhat deeper. I also tested this using the molehill test and didn't encounter any issues when the robot crossed the uneven areas moving forward. However, anyone who has a lot of extreme unevenness on their property should try to level it out as much as possible beforehand. Overall, the off-road capability is really good, especially considering the size and weight, although in my opinion the device is more suited for flat surfaces. The most important part of a robotic lawnmower is quality of the device. It is also built-in technology ensuring accurate positioning on the lawn. The Neomow X navigates using the advanced built-in LiDAR sensor. The foundation, namely LiDAR, or spelled out light detection and ranging, is located exclusively on the top side beneath the small dome of the casing. During mapping, the robot gets to know the area and creates a digital 3D map which is stored on the device. However, unlike with other devices, we unfortunately cannot view this map. Meanwhile, as the robot subsequently moves across the lawn area, the LiDAR sensor emits thousands of laser pulses in fractions of a second, thereby calculating the distance to nearby objects. And by comparing this with the previously created map, it can localize itself on the area. Since this is a method we find both in vacuum robots and in industrial applications, the accuracy is very high, within just a few centimeters. This enables extremely precise positioning on the lawn and consequently mowing in parallel lines. In practice, I didn't encounter any issues in this regard, which you can clearly see from the results in my video. The robot consistently mows in parallel lines without any noticeable swerving or crossing of boundaries. Furthermore, it doesn't matter to the robot whether it's mowing under large trees or near buildings, since it operates completely independently of GPS. This is especially advantageous for anyone unsure whether the GPS reception would be sufficient for a GPS-based robotic mower. But that was not all, because the Neomow X does not come without GPS, as we can clearly see on the top side. However, this is not used for positioning on the lawn, but solely for safety purposes. Thanks to GPS reception, we can track the robot in case it gets stolen, for example. In addition, the robot is equipped with an integrated SIM card, which gives the device access to the mobile network. This means it does not rely on a Wi-Fi network, which is particularly practical if you have a larger garden that is not fully covered by Wi-Fi. Admittedly, these features are very remarkable. As with other manufacturers, you have to pay extra for them. And in this case, they are already included from the start in all three models. That said, I still have a few criticisms from my side. Since the LiDAR sensor is obviously the heart of the lawnmower robot, it should be protected from damage as well as possible. While the packaging does include generous foam padding, unfortunately, there's no rubber protective cap or anything similar, which I personally find a bit unfortunate, especially if you want to turn the robot upside down. All in all, I can say that in my tests, the results regarding positioning were consistently positive, so I have nothing to criticize in that regard. When we talk about the topic of area performance, we will quickly realize that the new Neomow X is clearly aimed at medium to very large gardens. There are a total of 3 model variants to choose from, which differ only in terms of area coverage and the battery used. A light version for up to 2,000 square meters, the standard model for up to 4,000, and a pro model for an impressive 6,000 square meters. Compared to robots from other manufacturers, the Neomow X is thus, as can be seen in the graphic, at the top, and it can handle very large areas without any difficulty. Not to forget, the maximum area that we can create in the app depends on the respective model variant and is limited to 2,000, 4,000 or 6,000 square meters. So we should know exactly how large our area is beforehand. Or you can simply opt for the larger model right from the start. The robot's comparatively high area performance is due not only to its operating principle, but primarily to its cutting width. So, if we take a look at the underside, we notice that the large device, although it only has one blade disc, is equipped with 5 blades. Thus, as shown in the comparison graphic, the Neomow is in the good mid-range and allows for a precise and even cut of the grass blades. The diameter, in turn, is an impressive 280 millimeters and can therefore easily handle larger areas, as we have seen before. If you also compare this data, it is clearly evident that the Neomow also belongs to the upper middle field and is thus designed for medium to large gardens. Another major advantage that the Neomow offers in this regard is found in the software, specifically the variety of settings. Depending on what expectations one has for the mower, we can adjust the cutting width, or rather, the track spacing in the app as desired. If you want, for example, the fastest possible processing of the area, it is recommended to use a high speed and the maximum cutting width of 280 millimeters. On the other hand, if you want the best possible cutting pattern, then I would recommend reducing both the robot's speed and the track spacing. In my case, I have, for example, set the device to 20 centimeters and 0.25 meters per second. And I'm simply thrilled with the cutting pattern, or rather, the cutting performance. In this regard, the Neomow offers an adequately and sufficiently wide range of settings, allowing the mower to be perfectly adapted to individual needs and customizable. Another significant major advantage of the new Neomow relates to the built-in battery. To ensure maximum sustainability and cost efficiency, the battery is accessible from the outside. On the underside, the built-in lithium-ion battery is secured in place with several screws. This means it can be replaced and swapped out with little effort, which is very advantageous, for example, if it becomes worn out. The battery itself has a nominal voltage of approximately 18 volts with 13 ampere hours, resulting in an incredible 234 watt-hours. If you compare the capacity, you will quickly observe that the Neomow X significantly leaves all other previously tested models far behind. But that's not all, because if you choose the largest variant, the Neomow X Pro, you get a battery with a substantial 17.5 ampere hours, which is 315 watt-hours. In addition, this exact advantage is also reflected in the working time that the mower can achieve with one charge. It is rated for up to 600 square meters per charge, which is both realistic in practice and simply impressive. Of course, these are optimal values, and the area performance can vary greatly depending on the condition of the terrain and the settings. In my test, it was almost 4 hours that the Neomow continuously mowed before it began its journey back to the charging station with 20% remaining battery to protect the battery. The path length, slope, obstacles, and even the grass itself can either extend or shorten the runtime. Charging, in turn, takes approximately 3 hours, during which the mower resumes work at the position where it last stopped. So far, so good, but even at this point, there is definitely a point that deserves criticism. This refers to the charging station, or rather the charging contacts. If you take a closer look at it, you can see that the charging station has 2 movable contacts, which are touched or pressed in by the robot for charging. However, if the charging station is placed on uneven ground, it unfortunately happens that the robot, in my test, only briefly touched the contacts and then lost contact again because it couldn't get close enough to the contacts. The result, the robot stood empty in the charging station after the mowing process until I manually pushed it deeper into the station. No doubt, pretty annoying, but luckily, there's a small trick to prevent this from happening in the future. To do this, I slightly raised the end of the charging station. That is, the part where the contacts are located. A narrow board, or any other object about 1 centimeter high, for example, is enough to tilt the contact slightly forward so that the robot always has enough contact surface in the charging station to charge the battery. Apart from this small drawback, the Neomow X in terms of the battery is particularly good and is suitable for medium to very large areas. Let's talk about the topic of cutting height. One expects an ample cutting height range from the large robotic lawnmower. Regarding this, I can say that you will definitely not be disappointed by the Neomow X. On the contrary, the robot allows us a cutting height from a minimum of 30 mm up to an impressive 85 mm. In direct comparison, the Neomow undoubtedly and certainly stands out quite well, allowing for a sufficient deep cut, as well as mowing very tall grass. Another advantage of the robot lies in the way the cutting height is adjusted. Since this is a high-end model, we can also expect a fully electric cutting height adjustment, which can be conveniently controlled via the app. Through an appealing user interface, we can easily adjust the cutting height in small 5 mm increments using a slider, which is very remarkable, and I find it extremely practical. This way, the cutting height can be easily adjusted to suit any preference and can be set and changed across different zones without any hassle. To ensure that the grass surface is not damaged on rough terrain, the Neomow is equipped with a floating mower deck that is flexibly mounted, thus protecting the grass surface in critical situations. Not to be forgotten, the rotating metal disc installed on the underside. At first glance, it might look a bit odd, but on the other hand, it also offers certain advantages. Because this ensures that the knife plate does not come into direct contact with the ground and potentially get blocked or jammed by objects such as branches in order to safely and efficiently operate. In my opinion, an interesting approach that I haven't seen in any other lawnmower robot before. Another important feature of a robotic lawnmower is the edge cutting, which I have also thoroughly tested for you in practice. To ensure the edge is mowed as effectively as possible without the robot getting damaged, prior mapping is essential. From practical experience, I can say that thanks to the high-precision positioning technology, the robot drives exactly to the point during edge cutting where we guided it during mapping. During the general mowing process, the robot first travels along the parallel paths and then performs 2 edge-cutting rounds to complete the process. For protruding or sloping edges, we should leave a certain distance to prevent the robot from scraping along or falling off. Based on experience, I can recommend a distance of at least 10 centimeters. As shown, the robot does drive exactly along the mapped boundary, but when steering, it swings out quite far with the rear. To prevent it from being damaged, maintain at least a 10 centimeter distance. Due to the centrally positioned knife plate, in this case, you must visibly add another 11 centimeters, which result from the housing. Thus, you would need at least approximately a 21 centimeter wide mowing edge for the boundary so that the edge is completely mowed. On the other hand, if the lawn area can be driven over more generously, for example, because there is a path right next to it, I would recommend having the robotic mower drive approximately 15 to 20 centimeters on the boundary during mapping. This also ensures in that case that no edge is left uncut. Another feature that absolutely must not be missing from any new Mi robot is the management of multiple zones. Just like the main zone, we can create and manage additional zones by guiding the robot through the app. No-go zones are also created using the same principle, allowing you to cordon off and navigate around temporary objects on the lawn, such as garden furniture with a wide berth. So far, nothing unusual, because the real highlight only becomes apparent when we look at the number of zones allowed. While other robotic mowers allow for 10, 20, or 50 zones, as can be seen in the comparison chart, the number of zones for the Neomow X is completely unlimited, both regarding the mowing zone and both concerning the no-go zone. Yes, you heard that right. If necessary, I could just as easily create 1,000 zones with this device. In that regard, it's a truly unique feature and at the same time, a pioneering innovation. Another huge advantage is that, due to the positioning technology using LiDAR sensors, the charging station can also be placed anywhere. In this regard, there are no limitations, so I can place the charging station under the house's eaves, in the garage, or even inside the house itself to protect the robot as much as possible. After the startup process, it navigates itself autonomously along the path we previously defined to the lawn area. and starts mowing there, simply brilliant. The only thing to keep in mind in this context is that due to its size, the robot naturally requires a certain amount of space. This means that connecting bridges between zones should be at least 77 centimeters wide to prevent the robot from being damaged. As long as we keep this in mind, there won't be any issues. As far as general zone management is concerned, there's nothing to criticize either. The map display and management overview of the individual zones is simple and clear, allowing for quick expansion, or indeed the deletion of zones. So, anyone who doesn't want to worry about the number of individual zones and the maximum allowable area, because these might expand in the future, will be well served with the Neomow X. Let's now move on to another particularly important topic: obstacle detection. First, let's take a look at the existing systems that the Neomow has to offer. These include first the LiDAR sensor, the large bumper on the front, and an integrated camera. So, from a technical standpoint, the robot is quite well equipped. The question is how well it actually detects obstacles in practice. The core component, as already mentioned, is the LiDAR sensor, which is used by default for detection. I tested the robot with obstacles of various sizes. I started with particularly large obstacles such as people and garden furniture. These were reliably and without difficulties recognized by the Neomow in the test. But even smaller obstacles, such as a watering can, could still be reliably detected and avoided by the robot using the LiDAR sensor. It only becomes critical when the objects are smaller than 15 centimeters. In that case, the LiDAR sensor is no longer able to reliably detect them, as can be clearly seen with the soccer ball. This is exactly where the built-in camera comes into play. This has a sufficiently large field of view with 115.6 degrees horizontally by 59 degrees vertically and can be activated in the app under Settings. This allows the robot to detect and avoid even significantly smaller obstacles on the lawn, as you will see shortly. The soccer ball, the vase, and even the tiny children's toy were now reliably detected by the robot, which is really impressive. However, the obstacles shouldn't be any smaller, as that could lead to problems. And last but not least, the most important thing, the hedgehog or small animal test. How well does it recognize them? For this, I tested the Neomow X on a very realistic hedgehog dummy and can say after several attempts that the detection rate is quite high, but not at 100%, as can be seen in the video. Therefore, I would recommend the protection of small animals to only allow the robot operate during the day. It could also mow at night due to the LiDAR sensor. All in all, the obstacle detection is really quite good, though there's still room for improvement. Okay, and with that, everything has pretty much been said. So now we come to the final point, the conclusion. On the whole, I must openly admit that initially, regarding the Neomow X, I was quite literally torn. After testing the robot for a certain period, the numerous advantages that the device offers became apparent, so that the mower ultimately convinced me positively, and I actually don't want to give it up anymore. Okay, aside from the minor points of criticism, the most important thing, the inner qualities of the robot, are solid and work flawlessly. In that regard, there's really nothing to complain about. I recommend the mower with a good conscience. The only question is for whom or which type of garden. To find this out, I have carefully compiled the following criteria by which you can very carefully determine whether the Neomow X is indeed the right choice for you and your garden or not. The more criteria you can confirm, the better suited it is for you. So let's get started. First, I have a medium to very large lawn area that needs to be maintained, but a maximum of 6,000 square meters. Secondly, my lawn consists of a single zone or several separate zones. Since the number is unlimited, I don't have to worry about it now or in the future. Third, I don't want to worry about whether the mower might not have sufficient GPS reception. Due to LiDAR navigation, trees, buildings, or other large objects are not a limitation, but rather beneficial. Fourth, I have only small inclines in my lawn area with a maximum of approximately 30%, but the less, the better. Fifth, I want the widest possible cutting height range, so I can mow both very short and very tall grass. Sixth, efficient and reliable mowing in precise parallel paths where I can continue to make adjustments is particularly important to me. Seventh, It is important to me I can independently and easily replace the battery in case of wear. Additionally, a large capacity is useful so the mower can last for a while. 8th, reliable detection of large and medium-sized obstacles on the lawn is important to me and currently sufficient. However, with future updates, I would still like smaller obstacles to be reliably detected as well. Alright, so far so good. I hope this video was helpful in your decision-making process. What is your opinion on the new Neomow X from HOOKII? Feel free to write your thoughts, your experience in the comments below. Looking forward to your feedback. By the way, you can find the current prices of the device to support my channel below in the video description. Thank you very much for your support. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to give it a thumbs up to help promote it. If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel and activate the bell so you won't miss any future videos. So stay healthy, take care, and see you next time. Bye!